welcome to the seminar. My name is Wendy Crawford, and today our topic is the entrepreneur in you. Today's guest is Dr. Glen Laman, and we are going to be talking about how to activate the entrepreneur in you. Dr. Laman has conducted research on the characteristics of entrepreneurs, and he has written a highly acclaimed book, which is entitled Jamaican Entrepreneurship, a review of the characteristics, traits, and the ideas of some of the island's most accomplished entrepreneurs. Dr. Laman also teaches business basics, marketing, and history of management at UMT. Dr. Laman was born on the island of Jamaica and migrated to the U.S. after completing high school. He has worked for several Fortune 500 companies, such as Coca-Cola and AT&T, and he has both a master's and a doctorate degree in business administration. Hello, Dr. Laman.
Hello, Wendy.
Okay, so according to your bio, you have had a lot of interesting business experiences. You were the former president of the Jamaican Chamber of Commerce of Atlanta, and also you have owned, like we said, a couple businesses yourself. So were you the first president of the chamber?
Actually, I was the second
Okay.
president of the chamber, but I was a founding member of the chamber, and I also served as treasurer. And at one point, I was the head of the membership committee.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, there's always a saying that those who can't do teach.
That is
That's
true.
clearly not your case. So what types of businesses have you been involved in?
Right. So I started a restaurant and also an import-export business, importing frozen juices from the island of Jamaica.
Okay.
I'm also involved in an e-money project in East Africa.
Oh, wow.
But before that, I had a long career in IT, working, as you mentioned before, for some Fortune 500 companies. And I also went back to school, and as you mentioned, and pursued some advanced degrees.
Okay. Well, our topic today is the entrepreneur in you. So can you explain to us what is an entrepreneur?
Right. So there are many definitions of an entrepreneur. A common one is by a guy called Trumpeter. And his definition is that an entrepreneur is a person who comes up with a new way of doing things, a new product, a new technique, new inputs, and so on. Another one that's been around since the 1800s is by John Stuart Mill. And his definition is that an entrepreneur is the person who assumes the risk and the management of a business. Because, let's face it, businesses can fail,
right,
or you can make a profit.
Absolutely. Those are great.
Okay.
All right. Well, what led you to do research on entrepreneurs?
So I've always been interested in what makes an entrepreneur tick. I remember as a small boy that my mother had a friend who had a small restaurant. In Jamaica, it's known as a cook shop. Very tiny. But she had the best food. It was presented in such a fantastic way. The aroma was great. And I had to go by and, just imagine that she would give me some. She never did. But the point of this thing was that in just a few years, I watched as she expanded her business, got a bigger restaurant, and then even opened a second location.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But the key to this whole thing is that she was completely illiterate.
Oh, wow.
In fact, her friends used to say, she can't tell the letter A from the letter B. And people would laugh behind her back. But she was very successful. And it hit me that, wow, how can this person do that? Not without the benefit of an education. I, at that point, was trying to get an education myself. So I was fascinated by that. And also, as a teenager, I had to work because my father died when I was young. And I worked in weekends and holidays. I worked in a produce store, so I was around business. So some of those things I think piqued my interest in entrepreneurship.
That was a very great explanation to all that. I can see how that would be interesting. Okay, so in reading your book, I see that you identify two broad types of entrepreneurs. Can you explain what they are? Right.
So the first type of entrepreneur is called a necessity entrepreneur. That means that they become entrepreneurs out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an island like Jamaica, which is very poor, has a lot of necessity entrepreneurs because there are not enough jobs, for example, and a lot of people don't have enough education to get a job. So they have to do something on their own. So they are necessity entrepreneurs, just enough money to stay alive. So they are necessity entrepreneurs. The other type of entrepreneur is known as the opportunistic entrepreneur. These are the ones who come up with a new idea and scale up. Your Bill Gates, Elon Musk, those kinds of people. Those are the opportunistic. They see an opportunity and they seize it. So those are basically your two types of entrepreneurs. Yes.
Okay. So can anyone be an entrepreneur?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe that everyone has an entrepreneur inside. You just have to figure out how to unleash that entrepreneur, how to awaken that entrepreneur inside. But many things keep us from being entrepreneurs. For example, we may be afraid of failure. I think in our society, people are afraid of failing. If you go to school, they teach you that there's only one right answer. In real life, there are many right answers.
Agreed.
And this is the thing, entrepreneurs realize that there are other answers. So I think that if we can figure out what it is that's holding people back, we can unleash that entrepreneur. Also remember that they come in all shapes, all sizes, all ages. For example, we are familiar with Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken fame. He didn't become an entrepreneur until he was 65.
Right.
So it's never too late.
Right.
It's probably just lying there dormant, waiting to be awoken.
No, that's good for us to know. So now, what in your book, you interviewed 15 Jamaican entrepreneurs. What led you to do this research?
So after I retired from corporate world and started a few businesses, I had some time, so I went back to school, decided to pursue a doctorate. And it's always in me. I like to study, and I'm fascinated by study. I like to take tests, for example. But for my thesis, I had to come up with a topic, and it occurred to me that, well, I'm always interested in entrepreneurs, so that would be a good dissertation topic. So that's why I chose that. So I had to interview, I interviewed dozens of entrepreneurs, but I only put 15 in my book.
Okay.
So that's basically how it came about.
All right. Well, after you did all your research and you talked to all your people, what did you feel like was the difference between entrepreneurs and regular people?
I think one of the main things, is the ability to recognize opportunity. So most people, they look around and they see a lot of problems. Oh, we have a pandemic, or we have rain, we have hurricanes, whatever. But an entrepreneur will see an opportunity in that problem. So, and that's the funny thing, is that opportunities are hiding in plain sight. If there's bad weather, people probably need umbrellas or galoshes or whatever. An entrepreneur will see what's needed and figure out how to, make a business out of it.
Yep. Okay. So were any of the entrepreneurs that you interviewed, were they necessity entrepreneurs?
Oh, yes. So these are Jamaicans, of course. So most of them came from very humble backgrounds. No indoor plumbing.
Wow.
No electricity, no running water, and so on. And yet, the fascinating thing is that they were able to, through entrepreneurship, starting out very small with no money, they obviously weren't able to go to the bank and get money. So they started out on a shoestring, many of them. And even those who migrated to the US were of necessity entrepreneurs, because, for example, one of my entrepreneurs has a very big business, but he wasn't educated enough to get a job. So he had to start the business, and the rest is history.
Wow. It's amazing. Well, I know you interviewed a ton, so who was one of your favorites that you interviewed?
Right, so I have several favorites. They're all fascinating stories in their own right. But I'm always fascinated by the man who founded the Sandals hotel chain. His name is Butch Stewart. And he was the guy that demonstrated a lot of the characteristics of a good entrepreneur. First of all, he decided to open a hotel that was a rundown hotel. Okay, I mean, he bought a hotel that was run down. It was in a bad location. It was at the end of a runway on an airport. Okay, and the timing was bad because there was a recession. The economy, nobody was buying it, nobody was traveling. He did all of those things. So it was fascinating to see what he has accomplished. Another man was another Jamaican, Vincent Chan. He has an interesting story. He came from China as a boy. Days before he came, they left China. His father died in a tragic accident. So, they came to Jamaica. He had to live with relatives as he was growing up. But he got to work in some shops. So he picked up the entrepreneurial spirit from working in those environments. And so one of the things that he did was he revolutionized the Jamaican meat patty.
Oh.
Jamaicans love to eat patties. And at that time, the patties were all over the place, different varieties and so on. But he focused on making the perfect patty. And not only did he do that, so he innovated, he took something that was already existing, but he made it much better. And everyone recognized that it was much better. And not only that, he went all in on it. He began to sell just the patties and nothing else. So that was an interesting story. Another entrepreneur is a lady by the name of Lois Sherwood. And she's fascinating because she would never take no for an answer, according to her. And she saw opportunity. Jamaica being was a colony of the British Empire. In 1962, they were given independence. So the British were going home. So they had a lot of antique furniture. They were selling cheaply. She bought them up.
Oh, wow.
And she opened a store.
Yes.
To selling these antiques. But in addition to that, what she did was she hired local carpenters to replicate the antiques.
Nice.
And then she had another store that sold the knockoff, the replications, and she called them period reproduction. It was fascinating that she could do that, right? And she went on to found a lot of other businesses. I mean, I think she's the largest Burger King franchise on the island, and so on. So she was a serial entrepreneur, but definitely had that entrepreneurial attitude.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any more?
Right. Then there was Abe Issa, who entered the hotel business. But the thing that he did that was fascinating is he built a hotel in an area that was infested by mosquitoes.
Oh.
You wouldn't think, right?
Right.
Who would see an opportunity like that, right? Mosquito infested area, and he puts a hotel there. And it was a success.
Really?
Yes, and not only that, he was the first one to recognize that you could have the hotel operating all year round. Because prior to that, the hotels on the island would only operate in the winter season when the tourists would come. But he said, no, we could have it all year round.
Yeah.
So that was a fascinating thing. And also he pioneered the all-inclusive concept.
Okay.
So fascinating.
So that came to be. Okay.
Yes.
Wow, that is all fascinating.
Pretty wild. Huh?
Well, those are all great. So, okay, well, after all that, I love hearing all those stories. It's so interesting. What do you think is one of the key components, I guess, to what they all had in common?
So one basic ingredient, I think, is something we call locus of control. Okay. That's what psychologists call it. And what that means is that you believe that what you do makes a difference in the world. I mean, there are many people who believe that things just happen to them, like miracles happen or lightning strikes and whatever, win the lottery and so on. But a good entrepreneur understands that if they push something here, something might pop up over there. And so that's important, that you have that understanding that you have an internal locus of control versus an external where things are happening to you and you don't have to do anything. That's
a great answer. Okay, so let's talk about what do you feel like were some of the characteristics that you thought were very important? And you touched on that a little bit in your last answer, but is there anything else that you feel like was super important that they needed to understand?
Right. So also you'll find that entrepreneurs are tenacious. Once they start on the journey, they don't give up easily. They don't like to take no for an answer, and they will get knocked down, but they will bounce back. Another thing is that they think outside of the box. In other words, they're nonconformists in that sense. They will think outside the box. They will think of things in new ways. So that's a good point. That's a good habit to develop. Yeah. Thinking outside the box.
Okay. What about, let's see. Oh, yes. Is there anything the average person can do to be entrepreneurial?
Absolutely. I think once you understand what the main characteristics and traits of an entrepreneur are, you can begin to think and apply those traits. Just think about it. For example, we talked about opportunity recognition, right? So whenever you see a problem, instead of thinking, "Oh, what a problem,"
Right.
see if I can spot the opportunity hiding right here. So that's one thing to do. The other thing you can do is, of course, educate yourself. You can learn about entrepreneurs, read stories about people who have done. My book has 15 stories of people who have done fantastic things, starting many of them from with very little or nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And do you think everyone should be an entrepreneur?
I think everyone can be. I don't think they have to be.
Right.
I think you can do things in an entrepreneurial way. Even if you're working on a job, you could look for new ways to do your job.
Yeah.
So I think it makes life better if you think entrepreneurially. But you don't have to necessarily go out and start a new business.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Okay.
All right. So let's say I have a great idea. How do I proceed?
Right. So if you have a great idea, I think you have to remember that just having the idea is not enough.
Right.
Because, as they say, there's a saying that ideas without implementation are just illusions.
Yes.
So you have to figure out, how do I make this idea a reality? So you should do some work, do some homework, figure out what's involved to get this idea going, develop a plan, get to meet people who are maybe experts or can help you, develop, figure out how to get the capital, financial capital as well as social capital. Get that assembled, and of course, you must then take that leap and start your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so you mentioned social capital as being important.
Yes.
So, how so?
Right. So social capital, we all know that financial capital, of course, getting money from the bank or whatever, that you definitely need money to start a business, right? But social capital is a little different because it has to do with your connections, your network, people that you know. One of my entrepreneurs that's covered in the book, he had a large family. He had 11 siblings. And what he was able to do was to bring all his siblings together and present his idea, and they all chipped in. Well, I think somebody mortgaged their house, others shared some of their savings, and they pooled the money and were able to start a business that way. But social capital helps with information. It helps with, you might hear something. I think I mentioned Lois Sherwood. She was attending a party when she overheard that Burger King was looking for a franchise in the Caribbean. And so she pursued that. But because she was in the right, she had the right connections, she was able to, had access to that information.
Right.
So the social capital is very important. You can also provide support. If you have a business, you're tired, sometimes you get discouraged. They can give you emotional support, cheer you on, so to speak. So it's very important, social capital. And as we found out, you can also get financial capital from having a good social capital.
Yes. Okay. Well, wonderful. This has all been super. I'm loving hearing about all this. So, couple last things. How would you summarize all this for any budding entrepreneurs?
Right. So keep your mind open for an opportunity, of course. Develop a plan. Figure out how you're going to make this happen. What's required? Do you need permits? Do you need licenses? Do you need to hire a lawyer, register with the state, whatever. Get your network going. Figure out where you're going to get the money to start, and just do it.
That's simple.
That's
do
it. Just go for it.
Have to start somewhere. No, that's amazing. So thank you. Well, this is it in a nutshell. For more information and any more ideas, please be sure to check out Dr. Laman's book. Again, it is called Jamaican Entrepreneurship. It is a review of the characteristics, traits, and ideas of some of the most accomplished entrepreneurs in Jamaica. It's a wonderful book. I highly suggest you go get it.